Good morning, everybody. We're down here again this Sunday. Seems like it's been 2 years since all this deal started. It's really only the second week that we have been doing this live stream. Obviously, since nobody's gathering here at the building this morning, but it's a beautiful sunny day in Texoma. It's a beautiful day. It's a great day to be with your family, spend time together, study. Just want to spend a little bit of time talking about a few things through all this crisis and stuff. I sent out earlier this week, we posted something about there being a crisis and a promise. And we wanted to spend a little time talking about both of those and getting the facts. You know, anytime you have a crisis, anytime we have something that causes fear in people, facts are your friends. You know, that's why I'm so big on chapter and verse truth coming out of the Bible. I don't like all the I think and I feel and my opinion and all that stuff. I want actual facts and truth. You know, that keeps us out of speculation. That keeps us out of maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That keeps us from operating on half-truths. So I really thought I'd share a little bit about what I know, maybe help y'all a little bit with the current crisis that we have going on with COVID-19 and the virus and all that stuff. There's so much out there that's bad information. Most of my information I'm going to get from like the CDC, straight from the entities that are putting it out. I watch the press releases, you know, that the press conferences, not what comes out on the media after they've taken it and spun it their direction and then put it out there. I don't want to do anything off of clickbait, that type of stuff, but I just want the facts. I just want to know. The better informed we are, the better we're able to make good, sound decisions. You know, the book of James says, as many of you lack wisdom, ask God. He gives freely to all without reproach. So that's one of the things that I pray for every time I pray is, Lord, give me wisdom, because I need to be able to make good decisions. I need to be able to make sound judgments. And it says that he's going to give it. It's a promise. So that's one of the promises that we stand on. But when it comes to all this crisis stuff, I've been blessed that some of the people that gather here in this fellowship are very well connected. My wife is also a pacemaker nurse for a large medical company, and they do a lot of different things, but they also have been developing tests and stuff like that. Our U.S. government has been doing a really good job of trying to get testing approved. She just got an email this morning that they now have a test that the results will be back in 13 minutes. So instead of this 5 days and find out stuff, we've narrowed the window down. Now this process, because of government regulation, this process used to take a year and a half, 2 years to get all this stuff approved. Because they're cutting out the red tape because of the coronavirus, now they've got it down to where it got approved this morning. They're producing these tests 24/7, trying to get them out. Obviously, they're going to go to the hardest hit areas first. And then after that, they get disseminated to everybody. You know, if y'all are paying attention to where the most of the cases are, big cities, New York City, stuff like that, they have a problem. One of the things I wanted to clarify to people, the reason that it becomes such a big issue in our country, and the reason that our government has taken all of the precautionary steps they've taken, is because most people think about these spread of viruses in arithmetic, like 1 and then 2 and then 3, but this is an exponential problem. So instead of it going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, it goes from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, and it expands extremely quick. They know based on research that 1.4, if somebody has the flu, on average, they would infect 1.4 to 1.5 other people. If somebody has COVID-19, they will infect on average 3 people. Now that doesn't seem like a whole lot. That seems fairly minor when you say 1.4, 1.5 compared to 3. However, if one person infects 3 people and those 3 people infect 3 more, that's 9. And if we were to do the exponential math to the 10th power, okay, if we took 1.4, 1.5, let's say 1.5 people, if we took 1.5 people on the regular flu, so one person infects 1.5 and those people infect 1.5 and those people infect 1.5, we extrapolate that 10 times, we have a total of 58 people. Not very scary, you know. And we know that we see the flu in our world all the time, okay? If you take that same mathematical equation and you put 3 people in there, if you put 1 person to 3 people, 3 people to 3 people, which is 9, and so on and so forth, if you do that same thing 10 times, it's over 59,000. Now that's a big difference. That's why the CDC, our government, so on and so forth, has taken the steps they've taken. Now, do I believe the promises that God says that no plague's going to come near my dwelling and it gives me health? Yes, absolutely. Am I going to stand on that? Absolutely. But I also know that I live in a world where a lot of people either don't know the promises or they don't believe the promises. And they get into living in fear. So we got to be praying for our leaders of our country, for them to make wise decisions. Obviously, they're trying to avoid an epidemic by doing what they're doing, but it's also putting an economic strain on everybody, you know, some more than others. And we're starting to see the economy, you know, have problems there. We're starting to see people get laid off. We're starting to see people get furloughed. Obviously, if you're a waitress or, you know, in the hospitality business, that's kind of falling apart. Now, at the same time I say that, Kroger's hiring, Costco's hiring, Walmart's hiring. I mean, there's all these other places that they've had to ramp up production. Just like I said earlier about those tests through Abbott, they've had to ramp up production to get this stuff out. So there's opportunity, but then there's difficulty. There's always this mix of opportunity and difficulty. We're always going to deal with that. But the thing that's more contagious than the virus is the fear. And that's where a lot of people get stuck, is because they get bought into this fear mentality and they get scared and they wonder what's going to happen, and it's all because of the unknown. Okay, people get scared when they have things that they're unknowns. So getting caught up in the fear, if we will just limit our inputs from the crisis and spend more time taking inputs from the promise, there'll be a lot less fear. Because people get caught up on all these fears, and I want to give facts and figures and so that y'all know the truth. But at the same time, I want to show people that it's your choice, the inputs that you take in. It's your choice as to whether I listen to the media, whether I listen to all the news, whether I listen to all the bad reports, whether I listen to all the rumors, whether I listen to all the bad social media feed of, you know, it gets crazy. It just gets crazy. And I'm not as old as some, but I'm old enough to remember 2008, you know, and people got all caught up in fear back in 2008. And people would ask me about, you know, the stock market and the recession and all that stuff. And I told them all the same answer. I said, I tell you what I'm going to do. When the illegal immigrants start migrating back south across the Rio Grande because it's bad in the U.S. and they want to get out of here, then I might start to get a little nervous. But until that happens, we're going to be fine. You know, well, I'm not going to get caught up in the panic. You know, September the 11th, when that happened, man, everybody's freaking out. Everybody's nervous. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I was talking to a buddy of mine last week, and we were talking about the stock market and how a lot of things are artificially low right now because of fear. You know, if you really think about it, do you think that Apple and McDonald's and Walmart and all those businesses are just going to go out of business and America would cease to exist? No. But right now, fear is driving a lot of the market fall. So a lot of those things are on sale. You know, right now, if you have the money to invest, right now is a good time to be investing. And he made the comment that he had invested right before September the 11th, and then he'd lost it all. And I told him, I said, well, man, the only person that dies on the roller coaster is the person that jumps off. No, nobody ever dies on a roller coaster from the beginning to the end. The only person that dies is the person that throws their hands up, jumps off, and bails out. Okay? When we saw September the 11th happen, yes, it was a crisis. Yes, it was unexpected, and I'm not minimizing the tragedy at all. I am showing you the promise that we have of resilience, because in 57 days after September the 11th, everything was back to the economic level that it was on September the 10th. So we had a crisis, and it took 57 days to recover. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take to recover from what we're going through now, but I do know that our leaders in this country are doing everything they can to help it. A lot of people have brought up this socialism idea, because now the government's going to help people by sending them money and stuff like that to get the economy going again and get people out of a crunch. If you'll read the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment has to do with what's called taking. So if the government has to step in and take something from the citizens, it says that the citizens must be adequately compensated for the government's taking. So the case of eminent domain is the most common one, where somebody has a piece of land that's surrounded by the city, and the city says, look, we're going to have to annex that into the city. So we're going to pay you 5 times market value for this piece of land, because we have to do this for the good of all the people. That's the most common one everybody knows about. But it also applies to business. If the government, like we're seeing right now, if our government steps in and says, because of the precautionary measures that we have to take, we're going to take your ability to earn a living, to run a business, or to have livelihood, then based on the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, the government must adequately compensate the citizens for the taking. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, okay, they're trying to stop the spread of the virus. The virus isn't causing an economic impact. It's the government trying to stop the spread of something that's causing the economic impact. So that's why we saw the pass of the stimulus bill and all that stuff this past week. Our thing that we have to do at this point is control the controllables. We have to be able to control ourselves. We have to be able to control our emotions. We have to be able to control our actions. That's where we start to see the good and the bad. Some people can control themselves extremely well, some can't. And depending on how they deal with issues, we see the changes in whether they can control themselves or not. You know, there's some people that are getting stressed out, upset, irritated, aggravated, and that comes out. And people handle conflict in different ways, but we get to choose how we handle it. You know, I was in the grocery store the week before last, and I was just speaking to the cashier. I was checking out, getting a few things, and I said, well, has it been crazy around here? And she just kind of looked up at me and kind of nodded her head, and I just smiled at her. And she stopped and looked up at me, and she said, it's so nice to see somebody smile at me. I hadn't seen that all day. Now, we have the opportunity as the church in the world to be that to people. That doesn't cost anything. You know, 2 days ago, I was going down the highway. There was a lady that was broke down on 82, right smack in the turning lane to get on I-35. I mean, she was in the middle of the road, trailer on the back, horses on the trailer, the whole deal. Pulled up next to her, and I was like, hey, I'm running late already, but I have a tow strap. Let's pull you out of the middle of traffic and get you down here to a parking lot, at least to where you're at a safe place. until somebody gets there to help, because she'd already called somebody. They were coming, but she was going to be stuck right in the middle of the road, blocking traffic and everything else. It doesn't cost anything to stop and help people. It doesn't cost anything to be a good influence. That's the type of stuff that we just ought to do, that just ought to come naturally. And the more we do that, and the more people see us do that, being calm is also contagious. Fear is contagious, but so is being calm. We saw it with Jesus. When all the disciples were freaking out in the storm, he's down there sleeping. They wake him up. He's not worried. When the guy in charge, when they look over and the guy in charge isn't worried, they were like, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't be worried either. And then he just spoke to the storm and it settled down and all quit. So we can use that same example and apply it to our daily life. There's some things we can't control. If Ecclesiastes, last week I said something about Solomon and how he was the wisest and richest man that ever lived. He also wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. If we read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it goes through all kinds of things about a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted. It goes all the way down. I love this one. I love how it fits. There's a time to embrace and there's a time to refrain from embracing. Now, I don't know if they had social distancing back in his day, but it's definitely pretty cool that it says that, But as we go through, there's one at the end that says a time of war and a time of peace. I can't control that. But I can control some things. I can't control the time to be born to a certain degree. I definitely can't control the time to die. I can't control a time to plant, and I can't control a time to harvest. I can control the time to break down, and I can control the time to build up. There's some things I can't control. So we want to control what we can, and then we want to let God control us in our actions so that we show His love to everybody else. There's some things that are just beyond our control. That's fine. We'll deal with those. That's part of why we get together as a fellowship and gather up and help each other, because that way all of us get to see each other going through different stuff, how we deal with different things, how we do life together and love and support each other. That's the whole idea of being the church out in the world. But understand that different crises and different things mean different things to different people. Different terms mean things to different people. If I spend a lot of time around horse trainers, okay? So if a horse trainer tells me, well, he's spooked, I know that I have to look at the horse trainer I'm talking to and understand what they meant. Because if I'm talking to a reining horse trainer, when they say a horse spooked, that means that as they loped him around, he just kind of went like that and kind of just looked at something, like that. If I'm talking to a barrel horse trainer and they say he's spooked, that means that they got him pulled up as he went out the gate sideways. It's a totally different context. So we have to understand who we're talking to, because some people, the biggest crisis they've ever faced is having a dead battery on their cell phone. And some people have faced huge crises in their life, so this crisis is just absolutely no big deal. But understand that the person who hasn't faced the crisis, to them it's a big issue because they've never seen it. Somebody asked me about it the other day. I said, look, man, I've lived through wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, the worst drought in a century, crash, terrorist attacks, all that stuff. So this is just going to be another bump on the road. I mean, that's all it is. But to my kids, 7 and 9 years old, this is the first crisis they've ever seen. They need to see mama and daddy handling themselves, handling their business, praying together, and working together as a family. That's how we set the example, so that the kids grow up and they're like, hey, I saw my parents face crisis. I saw us face hardships. But I saw them stick together, stand together, and face it right. Because we understand the promise. And that's where we really have to grab a hold of the promise. If you got your Bibles, flip over to Romans, the end of Romans 4, first part of Romans 5. And I would advise go back and read all of this because there's so much good stuff in here. But it talks about the promise of Abraham and how all that's granted through faith. And we have to have faith to believe on it. And as we're going through, he's explaining that for the promise out of chapter 4, verse 13 says, for the promise that he would be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. As we go on down, it said that he did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God and being fully convinced that what he had promised, he was also able to perform. We have to know these, number one, and we have to take hold of them, number two. We cannot just nonchalantly, you can't throw this on the dashboard of your pickup truck, never read it, and think that somehow it's going to keep the boogeyman from getting your truck. I mean, it's just, some of the superstitions that goes around this is crazy. It's just a book. If you don't know what it says, then it's of absolutely no value to you. If you know what it says, the knowledge that you gain out of this becomes of tremendous value to us. Because when we go to Psalms 91, it's a wonderful promise. And it's based on a contingency that we do our part, okay? I shared something earlier this week about pray like it all depends on God and work like it all depends on you. It's a mutual relationship, A lot of people get hung up on the free will versus predestination thing, okay? And for those of y'all that are here, regular, y'all have heard me say it, but people that are tuning in online haven't, so I'll give you this explanation. Everybody talks about God predestines and people have free will and they don't know how these two things fit, okay? So I'll make it real simple. Before Amy became my wife, I predestined her to be my wife. So I went out and I bought a ring and I got a plan and I proposed to her, predestined her to be my wife. When I proposed to her and asked her the question, she had complete and total free will to say yes or to say no. Because she said yes, we have a marriage. We have a relationship. If I took away either one of those two things, you have no relationship. So if God predestines us to be sons and daughters, but we have free will whether we say yes or no, you do not have a relationship without both parties saying yes. What it's stating in there is that he predestined us. So his part's done. He's already offered. Do we want to take it? Just that simple. When we look at Psalms 91, it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. We have to do the dwelling. We have to choose to be there. He's going to be there. He's already given us those promises. We have to choose to take hold of it. If you read all the way through Psalms 91, man, it's awesome, all the promises and stuff. It talks about his truth shall be your shield and buckler. A buckler is like a little bitty small shield they use when they're sword fighting. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness. Pestilence is sickness and plagues. Sound familiar? Nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Go on down through there. One promise after another. Verse 10, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Now, for those of y'all that remember different parts of the Bible, that verse right there is what Satan quoted to Jesus when he had Jesus out in the wilderness giving him temptation. And Jesus said, don't tempt the Lord. Because he said, well, if you really are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. Because it said that his angels, and they'll bear you up and you won't dash your foot on a stone. There's a big, big difference between testing the Lord and tempting the Lord. If you want to test and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to do my part, I believe you're going to do your part. So I'm going to put him to the test. I'm going to do my part, believe you're going to do your part. Versus, I'm going to go out and do something absolutely stupid and then tempt you whether you're going to come in and save me or not. Huge difference. Every parent knows the difference. Every parent has kids that they might test them a little bit or they might tempt them to get in trouble. Big difference. So we want to stand on the promises. We have to do our part. He said, you shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, a young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. Now God said this part. He said, but he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. See the dual part of the relationship here? One promise, another one action. Okay? He shall call upon me, me is God, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Now that's awesome promises. If we want to take a hold of them, believe them, and stand on them. If we don't, they're not going to work for you, I promise. That's where that two-part relationship comes in. I would not have a marriage today if I had predestined Amy to be my wife and she had said no. Wouldn't have a relationship. You have to decide. He's going to give what he's going to give. He says, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. That's the deal. We got to draw near. We got to start walking. We got to get in. We got to dig. Okay? When we do that, then we get to be the light of the world. It changes our attitude, changes our outlook, changes how we handle crisis, minimizes the problems, maximizes the promise. And that's what we've got. I hope everybody's doing good. Take the time. Pray over your families, especially y'all fathers. Pray over your families, mothers, parents. Pray with your families. Take communion at home. You know, spend some time with each other. Love each other. Help each other. Then when you're out taking care of business, help everybody else. We love y'all. We hope to see y'all soon. Take care.